Today on Legally Yes, Joe Jonas was on board with an overseas move with Sophie Turner. Plus, Lizzo wants a trial by jury. And Lil Tay breaks her silence after her death hoax, and court battles regarding custody rages on. We've got that plus so much more on today's Legally Yes. Hey everyone, Christina Garibaldi here, and welcome to Legally Us. And I'm, of course, joined each and every week by President and CEO of West Coast Trial Lawyers, Nima Rahmani. Hi, Nima. How are you?
Doing amazing, Christina. Excited for another show.
And excited for another week, and lots more news on Joe Jonas and Sophie Turner, because this is getting uglier and more complicated as the days go on. So he appeared to be fully on board with moving to the UK with Sophie just 3 months before he filed for divorce. So according to court documents that were filed on September 26th, Joe and Sophie signed the purchase of a property in Wallingford, Oxford, England on July 7th. The estranged couple now put down a 10% deposit for the home, which is worth roughly about $9 million. So he gushed over the estate in an offer letter dated on June 16th. He said while picturing a life abroad with Sophie and their 2 daughters, he was completely charmed by the idea of dropping his children off at school and being able to spend a leisurely afternoon at the pub with his friends. He also wrote that he was incredibly inspired by the layout of the home, which even included a huge room ready to be my recording studio. He acknowledged the previous owners, adding, "We could tell that your family have truly loved living here, and we can envision our children growing up here and making this our forever home. I really think Sophie and I will be able to look after and for many, many years pay homage to the magic you have created here." So, does this prove that he was fully on board to live in the UK, and does this now give Sophie a little bit of a one-up?
Christina, this is good evidence for Sophie, but I'm sure Joe and his lawyers are going to argue that this is just a letter they wrote to try to convince those sellers to sell the home to them. People say all sorts of things when they want to buy a property. That doesn't mean that it's necessarily true. And even if it was, I expect Joe to argue that he changed his mind. He might have wanted to live in the UK with his wife and kids while they were together, but now that they're getting separated, it's in the kids' best interest to stay in the United States where they were born and where they've lived most of their lives.
Right. Now they have a temporary agreement in place, and they're supposed to be in court this week. What do you think that they'll kind of be hashing out here? Do you think that they're going to decide on a permanent living situation for the kids, or is this going to be drawn out for the next several months?
It may be drawn out. It's tough to say because Sophie filed and moved forward pretty aggressively, but then she agreed to a temporary settlement to have the kids remain in New York. Now, obviously, that's just temporary. It's not permanent. It's not binding, and at any moment, any of the parties can petition the court to have the children moved. And of course, the judge will have to determine what's in the best interest of the child. If Sophie wants to move the kids to the UK and Joe wants them to stay in the United States. But what's important is, at least for now, the kids are here. So the burden is going to be on Sophie to convince the court that it's better for them to be in another country.
So as we saw, Sophie has been kind of out and about lately, gallivanting around the city with Taylor Swift. We said that this divorce is getting really nasty. So could Joe use that against her, being like, well, she should really be home with the children?
Well, we see this a lot in celebrity divorces where someone's an entertainer, an actor, an actress, or a performer, and they have to work around the world. And the other spouse says, well, it's the best interest of the child or the children for them to remain with me. They need a stable school and home life. So we certainly do see this as evidence in these types of cases. That being said, if the kids are in New York and Sophie's going to a Sunday night football game in New York with her friend Taylor Swift to watch Travis Kelce, I don't think that that's a big deal. I don't think any judge is going to use that as evidence against Sophie.
You would hope not. All right, let's move on over to Lizzo, because she has asked the Los Angeles Superior Court to dismiss what she calls the ridiculous harassment lawsuits against her made by her former employees filed against her this year. So according to court documents, attorneys for Lizzo list at least 31 lines of defense that explain why the suits should be tossed out. However, she's also requesting a trial by jury in response to the complaints. So in these documents, Lizzo denies each and every allegation made against her, citing as one of her defenses that her ex-dancers are guilty of unclean hands, which is a legal term that accuses the plaintiff of participating in anything unethical in relation to the subject of the lawsuit. As we know, your firm is handling the case, representing the dancers. So what was your reaction when you saw this?
Christian, when I saw the answer, my reaction was these are boilerplate defenses that have nothing to do with the case. So unclean hands prohibits someone from recovering if they participated in wrongdoing. And the recent example is Lady Gaga's dog napper who tried to claim the award after she kidnapped the dog. So the judge said, no, you can't do that because you have unclean hands. Doesn't apply in this case. Now, Lizzo did agree to a jury trial. We demanded it, but she's really talking out of both sides of her mouth because one of those many affirmative defenses was a demand for arbitration to move this case from a public courtroom where everyone can watch and decide for themselves who's telling the truth, Lizzo or her many, many accusers. And she wants to get into a private arbitration, a secret proceeding where folks won't be able to watch. So even though she demanded a jury, I'm not sure Lizzo spokesperson has been communicating with her lawyer.
So obviously she wants this case dismissed. Where do you think that this goes from here? What steps are you taking now?
Well, the next steps are going to be discovery. We're going to depose Lizzo. So that's going to be a recorded interview at our office under oath with a court reporter and a videographer present. And we're going to move forward with discovery. We're going to propound. She's going to have to answer questions under oath. And we're going to similarly put our clients up there. And, there are 4 so far, but there are more who are coming forward every week. So I wouldn't be surprised if you're going to see more plaintiffs coming forward and suing Lizzo for misconduct at work.
How have your clients responded to this?
Our clients are disappointed. They thought that there's a possibility that Lizzo would do the right thing and accept responsibility. But every time someone comes forward, Lizzo's response is the same. They're all lying. Well, I think people aren't stupid, and they know that not everyone can be lying. And that's why we have judges and juries, and we're excited to put forward our case. And I'm glad that Lizzo agrees that this should all be decided in a courtroom.
All right, moving on over to rapper Lil Tay. She's speaking out for the first time since her viral death hoax in August when a message posted to her verified Instagram account claimed that she had died. She accused her father, Christopher Hope, of abuse that included inappropriate behavior and neglect, which she detailed in her post. She also claims that he was the one to make this death hoax as well. She claims that he had not been present in her life before her internet fame and reappeared with the intent to control her money. She also stated her belief, like I said, that he was behind the death hoax in an attempt to sabotage her career. Her mother had officially obtained primary custody, including sole day-to-day and final decision-making powers and responsibilities in the best interest of her. She's also the sole parent authorized to sign contracts. That her father was court-ordered to submit monthly child support payments in addition to other expenses. So it seems like she does not want her father in her life anymore. But can any other legal action be taken against her father in this case? A restraining order, an emancipation, and anything connected with the death hoax?
Yeah, it's certainly possible. So, we've talked about custody here on Legally Us, and there's physical custody and there's legal custody. Physical custody is where the child is, and legal custody is making decisions. Well, in this case, it sounds like the father doesn't have either. So he can't make decisions on behalf of Lil Tay or have any, physical contact with her. So to the extent that mom has sole physical and legal custody, I expect things to stay that way. Now, mom can control who sees her daughter, and Lil Tay can certainly choose not to see her father unless there's some court-ordered visitation. I don't think a restraining order will happen unless there's something more than this death hoax, but I fully expect Lil Tay to be able to not see her father and her mom to prevent the same.
So obviously, since Lil Tay, there have been some more death hoaxes that have come about. How do companies kind of crack down on these, if they can at all?
So faking your own death actually isn't illegal in most states. Now, it can be, of course, if you want to perpetuate a fraud or escape some other legal obligation. So the mere hoax itself, not illegal, but if you try to extract money or you try to get out of your debt or some other important matter like a court hearing, then it can be actionable and you can be found liable.
Well, another custody case that everybody's talking about is Blac Chyna and Tyga. We talked about this a couple weeks ago, but he has allegedly not been following the custody schedule they previously agreed upon after their 2014 split. She claims that she went weeks without seeing her son and had no idea where he was. She claimed that Tyga created a new schedule in early 2022 that decreased her time with King. And she said in a blink of an eye, it minimized her time with, minimized her son's time with her daughter. So she also said in the court filing that she requested that Tyga agree to a new schedule where she will have King from Fridays after school to Monday when school starts. And she also claimed that Tyga suddenly cut off all direct communication with her in mid-2019 and refused to give her his phone number or the address where he lives with King. So if that happened in mid-2019, you're almost, 3-4 years later. Why are you waiting so long to file this if you don't have his phone number or you know where your son is?
I take all these allegations with a grain of salt. I mean, we've seen them fly back and forth in family law cases where sometimes the spouse wants to hurt the other spouse or, there's a financial reason. I'm not saying that Blac Chyna's not telling the truth, but she's had her fair share of legal problems. And now she's raising accusations years later. So if I'm the judge here, I really want to delve into this to say, hey, who's telling the truth and who's not? Because, unfortunately, in these types of cases, false accusations are not uncommon.
So if the court determines that she is making these false accusations, could her time with her son be reduced even more?
Absolutely. Judges don't like people that lie to the court. So if the judge finds that Blac Chyna's accusations are unfounded and they're untrue, that's something that they can consider in deciding who should have custody, how much custody should they have, and how much child support should Tyga pay.
Right. And then in reverse, if these are proven allegations, and this has been going on for a number of years, will the court enforce these changes? And, I know previously she was looking for a little bit more money. So will this go in her favor?
I don't know if the reports are accurate, but there are reports that Blac Chyna is having some financial problems. She's having to sell off some of her assets. So, to the extent that this is about custody, there's a presumption that parents should enjoy joint custody. Now, obviously, the child has to live with one parent if they're separated while they're going to school. But when you're talking about weekends, they might alternate, or one parent may get weekends and one might get weekdays. So I think custody is a separate issue. Now, to the extent that Blac Chyna has custody, well, she's entitled to support. But if the children are entirely with Tyga, there's not really a reason for Tyga to pay Blac Chyna child support if he has sole physical custody.
All right. Well, Nima, thank you so much for your insight and expertise as always.
Thanks, Christina. See you next week.
All right. See you next week. For more news, content, and exclusive interviews, make sure to hit the sub, like, and bell button down below and visit usmagazine.com.